Namaskar and good morning to all of you. Let's start the class with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Asto ma satgamya, tamso ma jyotirgamya, mrityorma amritam gamya. Om sahna vavatu, sahna bhunaktu, sahviryam karvavahi, tejasvi navadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahi. Om shanti, shanti, shanti. Om. Today we are going to start a new book, Kathopanishad. Okay, called Kathopanishad also. Okay, when you just do the Sandhi, Kathopanishad. Okay, so I'm sure most of you have the books also. There are altogether 108 Upanishads. And Kathopanishad is perhaps the clearest of all the classical Upanishads which have been translated and commentaries have been written on them. And it is also among the most widely studied Upanishad. It was translated into Persian also in 17th century. Then there were copies, these translated copies. They were further translated into Latin and distributed in Europe. Arthur Schopenhauer praised it. Edwin Arnold also, these are some of the philosophers, I'm sure you know these names. And even Ralph Waldo Emerson, he even credited Kathopanishad for the central story at the end of his essay, Immortality, as well as his poem, Brahma. That's how popular this Kathopanishad is. Upanishad means Brahma Vidya. That means the knowledge of the Brahma. Kathopanishad explains Brahma Vidya most clearly, most vividly. And it repeats the essentials without making the subject complicated. And it just keeps on adding more and more thoughts into it, where it's describing Atma for us, which is part of Brahma, the absolute truth, the ultimate reality. This is the subject matter. So Brahma Vidya, because why do we need Brahma Vidya? Because we are so much under the influence of avidya, ignorance, because we know the root cause of all of our miseries, all of our calamities of the world is avidya, ignorance. So that's why we need vidya, the Brahma Vidya. Because by instinct or by intellect, we all think that we are the body. And this is ignorance. This is avidya. Body cannot be the meaning of I. I am Atma, the soul, ever shining, everlasting, eternal, pure consciousness. This is what Upanishads talk about. We try to understand all this intellectually first, but the clear picture comes only when we experience it. That's why they say clear perception and realization. That is the ultimate knowledge, not just only intellectual apprehension. So this Atmic knowledge, the Atam Vidya, was demanded by Nachiketa in this Upanishad. And he asked Yamraj, the god of death, can you explain it to me in a simple style? And he did. And that constitutes this Upanishad, the whole Upanishad. We'll see this verse in chapter 1. And first of all, there are 2 chapters in this Upanishad. 2 chapters. Each chapter has 3 sections, and these sections are called vallis. Vali means a creeper. So in the first chapter, 3 sections, 3 vallis. First vali has 29 verses. Second vali has 25 verses. And the third vali has 17 verses. And in the second chapter, second adhyay, again 3 vallis. First section has 15 verses. Second section, again 15 verses. And last section has 17 verses. That's how, but that is the size of this Upanishad. So 2 chapters and altogether 6 vallis. And we'll see in the first chapter, there is a verse which says, Sam modate modniyam hi labdava. Having attained the blissful Atma, he becomes happy. We all want to be happy, but we are looking for that happiness at the wrong place. So sam modate modniyam hi labdava. Atma is of the nature of eternal bliss. The only source of happiness is Atma. And that Atma is our own self. We don't have to find it somewhere else. We are that, but we have forgotten that. It's already attained. So it's attainment. When we say attainment or realization, is nothing but to know it. That's all. We don't have to find it. We don't have to look for it. It's right there. So it is not to be attained or enjoyed as an object, like something else, like a fruit or some other object. Atma, the pure Chaitanya, is ever luminous. It never gets sick. There's no flaw in it. But with all our ignorance, with all our avidya, we just don't know. Right now, I'm just giving the introduction. Somebody's asking which page. But Kathopanishad is in that book. That page number, maybe somebody can tell. The Vedic seers, they say, Uttishta, Jagrat, Prapye Varan Nibodhat. These rishis, they want us to become awakened. They say, arise. Uttisht means arise, get up, awake. And then sitting at the feet of Mahatma, the realized souls know it, realize it. This is in a very thundering voice, the sadhu says. So this knowledge of the Atma, the destroyer of ignorance, is being discussed again and again in this Kathopanishad. Atma can be thought of realized, remembered. Sure, we can do all this. We talk about it also. Only by a calm, quiet, and concentrated mind. That is the condition. Not by a greedy, anxious, and wavering mind. So that's why concentration is needed. Purity is needed. Only then we can understand this deep subject matter. And once we understand it, then we can realize it. There's a term which is often comes among the scholars, among the people who study these scriptures, the deep philosophical scriptures, Atamvid. Atamvid. That means a realized soul. Knowledge of the self, Atamvid. Okay, so it's not an intellectual knowledge, it's a realized knowledge. Okay, realized. If the mind of the hearer is faithful, pure, concentrated, calm, then only it can be realized. Only then you can establish yourself in this kind of a knowledge. So for that, you got to continuously take your mind towards the Atma. That's the reason we recite the mantras, that our mind, which likes to go outward, it goes inward. This is the reason why renunciation or vairagya is considered as an unavoidable sadhana for Brahma Jnana. So this vairagya is detachment from the worldly sphere. Because vairagya can destroy all sorts of desires, the worldly desires or dirt of the desires, and make the mind pure. Vairagya. Otherwise, we are thinking about only the objective world. And no other Upanishad has so clearly described the full true nature of a very healthy vairagya. Healthy vairagya. It's not just a shamshan vairagya, healthy vairagya. That's what we'll see in the words of Nachiketa. By vairagya and by practicing meditation, our mind becomes slowly concentrated. And concentration of our mind is absolutely necessary for the direct perception and realization of the Atma. Okay. So first of all, be good, do good. So that means our actions, our karma got to be good. And then meditation, constant remembrance of the divinity. And effect of all this will be a purified mind. So that's why in the Vedas, when we look at a whole book of Veda, Upasana is before that. Karma Kand is even before Upasanas. Upanishads are towards the end. By the time you have done all that, your mind is pure. You can really see the purity. So practice Upasana also. Do jap also. Meditation also. Do the selfless service also. Because when we do the selfless service and Upasana, the wavering state of mind will end. The mind will become gradually purified. It's not just one day. Mind has been traveling with the Atma for countless lives. So there are several layers of dirt in our mind. So it takes some time. You got to have that kind of a understanding of the whole structure. then you'll be able to realize undoubtedly the Atma. You will come to live with this. It just becomes your own experience, not just only Nachiketa said it or Yamaraj said it or some guru said it. No, it is your experience. Never be satisfied by simply attending and hearing the discourses. That's just a very preliminary step. Sure, it's very essential, but it's preliminary. So intellectual knowledge of the Atma is the first stage. That's what we do in these classes. Do not think that this is the last stage, that I have attended a 1 hour class every day, I'm done. No, that is a preliminary stage. Try to reach that final stage by performing continuously the sadhana, the spiritual sadhana. Contentment is considered a virtue. Santosh. But that contentment for the worldly sphere. Never feel contented with the preliminary intellectual knowledge. Strive to become and be. We'll see that this great Upanishad expounds this great truth very simply as to what happens to the soul after death. If we are the Atma, what happens? We have seen our loved ones gone, left the body over here, and body was just burnt or buried. Where did the person go? What really happened to our loved ones? That's what Nachiketa asks the Yamaraj. And the whole scripture is in the form of a dialogue. Okay, just like we see it in other Vedic scriptures. In Bhagavad Gita, dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. We see in Bhagavad Puran, dialogue between Shukdev and Parikshit. So over here, this dialogue is between God of death, Yamraj, and Nachiketa, a Brahman boy of just 9 years. Its importance can very well be gauged by the fact that many of the Kathopanishad mantras have been reproduced in other scriptures. We saw it in Bhagavad Gita, in Taittiriya Upanishad also. So that means this Kathopanishad came before these other scriptures. The book which you have, I think it has 9 or 10 Upanishads. These are the 10 main Upanishads which have been translated. We have done some of them, or most of them we have studied, but Kathopanishad, we are touching upon it again. And let me tell you, all these Upanishads, they are part of those 4 Vedas. So this Kathopanishad, which Ved? Is it part of Rig Ved or Yajur Ved or Sam Ved or Atharva Ved? It is part of Yajur Ved. Yajur Ved. Okay, so remember I told you that first part is the Karam Kand, the second part is Upasana Kand, the third part of every Ved is called a Gyan Kand, which is Upanishad. So this Kathopanishad is in Yajur Ved, in the last portion of Yajur Ved. So Upanishads, they contain the highest wisdom. That's why we have to go through those preliminary steps to really understand these Upanishads also, because otherwise they seem very dry. So in this Upanishad, sure, there's a story. Kath means a story also. So with the help of the story, it just grasps our mind. But we'll see that by the time we reach the Gyan, it becomes very dry. But if the mind is pure, if you are ready for it, then it doesn't seem dry. You get very lot out of it because you're experiencing it also. Okay, so when we are studying these Upanishads, make sure you are practicing, you are very vigilant about these lower urges of violence. So that means non-violence got to be very, very much part of our personality. In our words also, in our thoughts also, in our actions also. Truthfulness has to be there. Purity has to be there. Only then we'll see that, yeah, this does make sense. The term Upanishad itself, Upanishad, that means sitting near your Guru or approaching the Guru and sitting near the Guru with a full nishtha and having a conversation about Brahm Gyan, Upanishad. It also means the mystery of self. Also means the secret teaching. So there's so many meaning of this term Upanishad. Upanishads are part of the Shrutis, not the Samritis. Shrutis. That means a revelation. Revelation directly from the highest revelation. There's no scripture as elevating and inspiring as the Upanishads. But we have to be ready for it. It's almost like if there's a Amrita, we have to be ready for that Amrita. To put it into the right container, to absorb it properly. This is like a Amrita. And in this particular Upanishad, we'll see that style is unique. It's a beautiful poetry and a philosophical wisdom. Okay, so let's look at the very first verse of the first chapter. Ushan have vaj shravasaha sarva ved samdadav tasyeha nachiketaha nam putra asa. Ushan ha. That means Ushan means desires. Where means indeed. Okay, desires of heaven, heavenly pleasures. Ushan where. Vaj Shravs, the son of Vajshras. Okay. Sarava Ved Sam, all that he possessed, the Dau gave away. Tasyeha, to him, Nachiketa, that's a name, Nam by name, Putraha, son, As, there was. So that's how this story starts. One's desires of heaven. What does that mean? That means the Karam Kand. We do Karam Kand because we want to have some heavenly pleasures. So one's desires of heaven, the son of Vajashva. Actually, this is a grandfather's name. Nachiketa's grandfather, the son of Vajashva. His father's name is actually Gautama. Gave away in a sacrifice all that he possessed. And he had a son, Nachiketa by name. Okay, so Nachiketa is the name of that little boy. Father's name is Gautam, and father's father name is Vajashva. So Ushna word, Ushna means being desirous. So this opening word declares the basis of the yagyas. Yagya, sacrifice, rituals. There are countless yagyas mentioned in the Vedas. That if you do this, you will get that. That's why it's a very preliminary knowledge. It is the first step. The people who want this and that in this world, they are not thinking about the higher, they are not thinking about the Atma. To bring them together and to just show them that, hey, there's a more to life than just worldly desires. So do the yagya also. Pray to God also. So that's why the sacrifices, the rituals are all performed for gaining some kind of an end which is desirous by the people. If I help somebody, I'll be helped. If I do some good deeds in this life, my future life will be good. That's what heaven is actually, the future. So the Karam Kand promises a temporary cure for the desires or all that shakiness in our mind. But that's why the Upanishadic part, the Gyan Kand, comes later on. So this father of Nachiketa is performing a yajna and he's giving away everything. He was a king also. He was a Brahman also. He was a king also. So that's why there's an insistence over here in this Upanishad. We will see that in the second chapter again. It says when all desires are renounced, the mortal becomes immortal and realizes Brahma. So first from the temporary desires, we are doing the yajna for future fulfillment of future desires. Then ultimately understanding that future desires, why I'm wasting time? This human life is to attain Godhood. Okay. So, but this opening stanza over here just paints the picture for us that there's a big yajna going on by Nachiketa's father. And all those Karma Kand, the yajnas are being done for heavenly pleasures. Okay. So that is the picture being painted. So now in the next verse, you will see that it just becomes a little bit more clear. Tam ha kumaram santam dakshinasu naya manasu shraddha avivesh sa amanyat. Tam ha, into him, kumaram, son. Santam, being good. Dakshinasu, that's a dakshina, the presents, the gifts. Niyamanasu, being distributed. Shraddha, faith. Avi, vesh, entered. Sa means he. A manyat, thought. When the presents were being distributed, because this dan is a part of the yajna. So when the presents were being distributed, anxiety entered the heart of Kumar, this Nachiketa, young boy. And what is this anxiety? Anxiety is about the welfare of the father. Because he's watching what is happening over there. So this anxiety entered the heart of Nachiketas, who was still a boy, and he thought, see, Kumar means a little boy, not a yuvak yet. Kumar. So this opening verse or these two verses, they are giving us a very intimate information about Nachiketa. So I told you that his grandfather's name, it's a famous name actually in the scriptures. Grandfather. So he belonged to that kind of a Brahmin family. where the kids from a very beginning started to learn. So he knew that. That's why he is looking at the welfare of his father. Because father is engaged in performance of a great actually this sacrifice which he was doing, its name is Vishwajit. That is the sacrifice, because all those Vedic sacrifices or yajnas, they have names also. Just like in Ramayana, King Dashrath did the sacrifice Utreshti Yajna because he wanted to have offsprings. Utreshti. So over here, this is a Vishwajit Yajna he was doing. And in this Vishwajit Yajna, you give away in charity whatever you have. सब कुछ दे देना दक्षिणा में. So this was generally performed by the kings in that time. After conquering the kingdoms, victoriously, when they returned to their own capitals, they performed this yajna. So that they can, after this, they were supposed to enter into sannyas actually after this Vishwajit yajna. Give away everything and enter into sannyas. So over here, the cultural purity and understanding of this young boy is mentioned. Because he knew this Shraddha also. Shraddha Avivesh. And we all know how important Shraddha is if we want to learn these Upanishads or if we want to just know who we are. We often talk about that Shat Sampati. Shat Sampati for a student. So looks like Nachiketa knew that this is the Sampati I have. Sham, Dam, Uprati, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhana. So that's Shraddha. So this word, this term Shraddha is very expressive here. So these qualifications he knew and he had. Because without Shraddha, you cannot follow the dictates of any philosophy. It just cannot even enter. So his father, he's doing this just routinely, this Vishwajit Yajna. Nachiketa, the boy, he had a sufficient discrimination. What to do, what not to do. Because he knew the inner significance of the sacrifice. And inner sacrifice, inner quality of that faith has to be there. And he judged it. How? When, let's look at it, what he says. He's thinking about it. What is really happening? He must be watching, like little kids, they watch from a distance. What are the adults doing? So he says, Pi Todka, Jagatrina, Dugd Doha, Nir Indriya, Anandaha Nam Te Lokaha, Tanasa, Gachati, Dadat. Pi Todka. The cows that have drunk water for the last time. That means the old cows. Jagatrinaha, eaten grass for the last time. So that means they are so old. Dugdha Doha have yielded all their milk. Nir Indriyaha, barren. That means they are unable to give birth anymore. Nir Indriya. Anandaha, joyless. Nam means verily, te means those, lokaha, the worlds. Tan, them. Sa means he, gachati goes. Ta means them, dadata, presents, like a dan. These cows have drunk water for the last time, eaten grass for the last time, have yielded all their milk and are barren. Joyless verily are the worlds which he attains who gives these gifts and yajna. So he's thinking it to himself that my father is doing a Vishwajit yajna and all he's doing is this. He's giving away something which is useless. Because if you are giving something which is no use to somebody, he says, joyless are the world. See, this is the discrimination. To be able to think beyond that particular situation. Because Father is doing this yajna so that heavenly pleasure comes. He says, joyless will be the world for him. Because he's not doing it properly. So these four things which are describing the cows over here. Pitodka, Jagatrina, Dugdadroha, Dugdadoha, Nirindriya. So we can have a clear picture of the sad lot over here. The cow which cannot drink will not eat. Naturally, are no use to anybody, whoever gets it. They are so old, they will not yield any milk and they are barren. So you see that in the minimum words, the maximum suggestiveness is the Upanishadic style. Okay, so this is verse number 3 in chapter number 1. So the boy of 9 years was able to quote the Shastra. Because the second line over here, Ananda naam te loka tanasa gachati tadadka. That is a scriptural quotation. Because he's saying anybody who becomes so stingy, miserly in their gifts to the priests would reach joyless worlds. So he was not illiterate. He already knew a lot. He knew the scriptures. And he is a very deep thinker also. So now let's look at next verse. What did he do after watching it, after looking at it, after thinking like this so deeply? What is his action? Because he's still a young boy. He cannot dictate his father. But there is some way he wants to help his father. Because it's bothering him. So he says, Saha uvach pitram tat kasmei mam dasyati iti. Dvitiyam tritiyam tamha uvach mrityave tavam dadami iti. Saha, that means he, uvach said, pitram, to his father. Tat, O father. Kasmei, to whom? Mam means me. Dasyati iti, will you give? Dvitiyam for the second, Tritiyam for the third time. Tam means to him. Ha uvach said. Mrityave, unto death. Tvam means you. Dadami, I give. Iti means thus. He said to his father, Father, to whom will you give me? Because in this yajna, you give everything. To whom you will give me? He said this again and again. Not just one time, second time and third time also. So he said this again and again and again for the third time. The enraged father said, unto death do I give you. So you can see the vivid picture of the home of Gautam, with his courtyard crowded by the hundreds of priests. It's not just one priest, several priests. They are assembled there to receive the presents. So it's a veranda of that house, and the child is standing there, upset with his own confusion, what is really happening. And he cannot really approach his father. That whatever is going in his mind, he cannot explain it to him. But he is anxious about the outcome of all this for his father. In his knowledge of the scriptures, he knew that sacrifice is so potent. And whatever the performer has should be given away. But due to some attachment or a delusory feeling of proprietorship, the old man has decided to make some compromises there between the injunctions of the scripture and his own impulses. And Nachiketa sees there's a tragedy in store for his father. So that's why this is almost like a sense of duty towards his father. He walks up to the father and he says, Father, to whom will you give me? Okay. So naturally, he is approaching his father, offering himself as a happy sacrifice. That you own me, I'm still a young boy. Even though father doesn't have the right, but he says, I'm young, to whom you're going to give me? I'm sure the father at first ignored. That's why Nachiketa repeated 3 times. And the father, in a harmless curse, burst out, unto death do I give you. It's equivalent to today's parents. When a child is bothering, they'll say, go to hell. That kind of a language. But Nachiketa, being a boy of wisdom, he took this very seriously. And we'll see that next week from the verse number 5. What does he do? What does he do? He did not take it lightly. He said, my father said it. There is a meaning behind it. I got to follow the instructions of my father. He doesn't die, but he goes to the Lord of Death. He says, I got to go there. And he leaves home. So let's stop it here. And we'll go through the questions also, and then a few minutes of meditation. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.